So now, after all your education, after your Doctor Who, after your Star Trek, after your grandfather and his inventions, we're now onto the SSC Graduate Scheme.
Yeah.
So what does your graduate program or graduate diary look like at the moment? How far into it are you? How is it split? How long does it last?
So the graduate scheme, technically it's 2 years, and that first 2 years is made up of a series of placements, which at first they say there'll be initially 3 months. And in the first year, you'll do 4 3-month placements and then 3-4 months in the second year. But it's not that strict at all. It depends on the projects you're going into, how much they need done, just how much work there is there for you, what you're interested in. You can decide where you're going, and they want you to decide it. So it's deliberately not overly structured, but there is sufficient structure in there to make sure that you hit your development points and things like that. So that's the day-to-day work aspect of those placements. At the same time, you're also working towards chartership, or in my case, IMechE, chemical engineers, IChemE, IEEE, or those are just the ones that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. There's lots of other ones, whichever one you're involved with, they'll usually support. And that's working towards a UK spec, hitting all your competencies, which that's quite hard to get used to, that level of, there's a certain way you have to present that. You've got limited words, and it's an interesting exercise. It's quite good fun. But you've got to get through that. And what they actually do is, Stephen Brooker, who runs the thermal grad scheme, he often describes it as actually more like a 5-year grad scheme, because they'll support you all the way to chartership with that, on what's, well, in my case, is called the MPDS, Mentored Professional Development Scheme. Which IMechE, I think IChemE do it. I don't know exactly who does it, but certainly IMechE do. And that is 5 years to get chartered, and you have a mentor from, in this case, within the company. And they just guide you to what you need to be saying. If there's any problems with your project plan or your quarterly reviews, they'll let you know. But you're kind of left to drive that yourself. They're not going to chase you up. That's something you have to do off your own back. So you really have to be quite strict with yourself about that. So, but it's good. It teaches you good skills. And on top of that, so that's your sort of official training as your long-term professional development as a chartered engineer. But there's also various portals for your own training, your own interests, also within the company that have certain requirements that you hit, things like how you share certain material. You've got to be aware of the sensitivities around that, and health and safety, various things like that you have to do. And there's different online portals for that. And you can also find any seminars. I got involved with a thing called the Alexon seminar earlier in the year. And that was something which I found and took to my line manager and got clearance to go and do, and set up all the transport stuff myself. And so there's freedom for you to drive your development as you see fit as well, and around the things that you're interested in. So it's, I sometimes feel like I'm a bit evangelistic about the SSC Graduate Scheme, but I really do think it's one of the best out there.
No, excellent.
Really pleased with myself for getting here.
No, you should be, for sure. So you mentioned that you've got to be, it seems like you've got to be quite self-driven to be in this sort of position on the graduate scheme. Like, say, they won't chase you up in that sort of sense. Do you think it takes a particular type of person to become an engineer and do this sort of thing?
Well, I think you've got to have a professional mindset. Beyond that, I think it takes all sorts. I think you want people with different ideas, with different approaches. You need to be ready to contribute. You need to be able to get your reports in or whatever. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to say, no, if this is a situation for you, then no, you couldn't do this. If you decide to do something, you'll probably do it. It's about taking charge of your own approach to life and good work. Some good work ethic and things.
So self-driven, creative, friendly, mindful of others, and all the good stuff. Teamwork. I bet that's a good one as well.
Well, that's one to hit actually. Is so the day-to-day work in the placements tends to be you'll be in multidisciplinary teams. These days, it's, in fact, even before COVID, we were largely doing it online because people will be situated all around the country. So you have to be ready to interact with people at all levels of the business and different disciplines, and also not just engineers, so also the larger company, corporate, and engage with those interests as well.
So in these groups, is it the group of engineers, a group of graduates, or is it like a mixed bag of people in these multidisciplinary groups?
Typically, there wouldn't be more than 2 graduates in each group. Normally, it'll only be the one. But each of those graduates will be working on significantly different aspects. We did do a graduate group project as well, which was something which we were allowed to decide what we wanted to try and develop, what we thought would be interesting. Ours was actually quite successful. I was quite proud of how far that went. And we ended up presenting it to the board, see what they thought, and it all went very well. Very interesting exercise. But that's, I mean, I'm still very much in touch with the other graduates, but that's more sort of peer support and socialising. And we're very much encouraged to maintain that work-life balance. There's nobody standing over your shoulder going, you've got to do this now, you've got to be there. And also, that if anything, they're more on top of you to make sure that you're getting a bit of exercise and maintaining your stress levels and making sure you're looking after all aspects of your life, not just your work. So
it's excellent to see that they're integrated with that deep into an individual person. I'm sure it doesn't stop at graduates. I'm sure it stops with all employees as well, which is...
Yeah, well, that's what you see is it's not, I mean, you actually see the senior engineers live that there's lots of different engineers have lots of different exercise interests. There's runners and there's cyclists, and they're really quite good at it. Well, not all of them, not everybody's like that. Some people are more relaxed about it, but you see there's some really accomplished athletes in the company.
Excellent. It's great to see that people are, well, the graduate program is tailored in this sort of way. So you mentioned about how you did the graduate project together. Do you work with graduates and other projects as well, or is it mainly just solo work that you're doing?
In terms of other graduates, you don't really feel like, you're not just kind of tagged as a graduate when you're in the team. You're just another functional part of the team.
Excellent, exactly.
Yeah, and you might be working with another graduate, but it's just another engineer, just like anybody else. So in that respect, yeah, you'll define what your work's going to be, and you'll have as much interaction as you can with your placement manager. Try and make sure you're still on the same track. Something I've been guilty of in the past is thinking I'm going off and doing the right thing, producing some interesting stuff, but it's perhaps not as targeted as it could be. So I have to learn to interact more take back my findings to my placement manager more. But yes, so you will have your own work package, and it's up to you to find the way to do that and make sure that your approach is correct and make sure everything's good. But it will be your own sort of deliverable.
Sounds a very interesting program. It sounds really good.
Yeah,
so
I'm enjoying it.
Excellent, good. If there's one thing throughout the placement so far that's been the most exciting, most memorable experience you've had, what would it be?
Oh, that's out of the blue. Let me have a think. Do you know, kind of rather than giving you a single aspect, as a more general point is what I've found.
Yeah, go.
Is in the offices, you can, people aren't just sitting down in front of their computers and working away 100 miles an hour. There's little conversations going on all the time, and people are, and I don't know, I don't want to talk about other industries, but you might imagine that things like water cooler chat might be gossip and stuff. I found that kind of thing in SSE is about ideas, and it really is that aspirational. And what really blew me away was when I saw that they were talking about hydrogen energy, because as I mentioned earlier, that's something I'm particularly interested in.
Yes, yes.
And so for me to not be the guy starting the conversation about hydrogen was kind of mind-blowing. And I was really pleased to see that it's being discussed there, and I was able to get involved in somebody else's conversation about it rather than having to drive it myself all the time. So it is to see that level of ideas being discussed just off the cuff, just out of interest. It was delightful for me.
No, it sounds excellent. So you mentioned you got a placement manager. So is this placement manager your mentor?
No, so the way the structure works is, I mentioned Stephen Brooker earlier.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. He's the line manager he's my line manager for the graduate scheme, and he runs the whole graduate scheme as well. And then, so he'll be my manager throughout, so my line manager throughout the graduate scheme for the 2 years. In each placement I go on, I'll have a different placement manager, and they'll be sat in whichever team that I'm working with. And also, or rather, it kind of breaks down further from there, because their team will be working for series of other teams as well. So, but they'll direct how you're going to interact with those teams. So, and that's how it works. And so, and you mentioned the mentor as well. The mentor is completely separate from that. Your mentor's not involved at all with your projects. They just focus entirely on your IMechE or IChemE, whatever, your involvement with them.
Oh, okay, so that's how they support you then, basically, your mentor. And
that mentor will stay the same throughout the 5 years. Well, potentially, you might need to change them for various reasons, but if that doesn't happen, then there's a good chance they'll be the same for 5 years.
Oh, excellent. It's good to see that they're supporting you on this whole journey of the program as well. 5 years is a long time to be helping someone, so I'm sure the relationship will be good and flourish during that time period. So in regards to staying up to date with what's going on in the industry, what do you do to keep, at the forefront, to make sure you know what's going on in the industry in regards to energy? Do you read industry magazines? Are you clued up on LinkedIn? What do you do?
So we have a graduate development team who they'll send out some newsletters. I mean, there's various portals. We also have a renewables newsletter sent out every day. We also have Yammer, where I think a lot of the thermal information is passed along. So I don't know if you know about Yammer.
No, tell me.
I hadn't heard of it until I joined the company, but I'm not massively social. Social software. Social.
Like social media and such, yeah.
Social media, that's the term, sorry. I'm not massively literate with that kind of thing, so I don't know if it was more widely used, but it's kind of like Facebook. And you just put out if something interesting's happened. It doesn't have to be a big engineering thing. It could be a health and safety thing, or it could be a personal thing. And that Yammer is kind of like our internal social media, and that's a lot of the information gets passed out there. And if anybody's read an interesting article, they'll pass it on there as well. And also on top of that, there's New Scientist and things like that. And IMechE send out a magazine every month.
Oh, excellent. So in the graduate program, is there a specific achievement that you're very proud to talk about?
In the graduate program? Yeah. So I mentioned earlier the graduate project that we did.
Yes.
So our project was looking at energy from waste sites and how we could potentially put a carbon capture facility onto the energy from waste sites, and what that might look like, and how it might compete in the open market, what the technology would look like. Basically trying to build a business and eventually put that to the company and see how it went. And our project, so the whole graduate scheme did it. So I think there was 6 different teams altogether, something like that. And ours and one other were highly successful, and both of us I think they ended up saying, actually, we'll take them both forward, and ended up presenting to the board of the company. And that's a level of integration from top to bottom that you don't see, or I wasn't expecting to see it at this point. And that is what you find here. It's, if you've got something interesting to say, folk will come to you and talk to you about it. It's not, you can have that level of input, and it's really, and for us to have achieved that for our team, and I feel I had a significant input to it. So very, very proud of that.
Seems like a great opportunity as well for graduates to, like you say, get any idea across, no matter how good or bad it is. And then these team projects as well, to keep your relationship strong with the other graduates as well, making sure you're not alone, and just getting the ideas and bouncing ideas across from each other. It's a great initiative.
Yeah. It was also a great way to involve yourself with that technology, because it allowed you to put some time aside to actually support your own learning and test your ideas for it. And there's a few ideas came through where you went, yeah, we'll try it out. Actually, you get to this bit, it doesn't quite work there. So you realise actually that's not appropriate. But other things you might not expect came through and actually flourished. So it was a really real eye opener for a group at quite a beginner stage to have had something to get to develop it to that level and spend that amount of time on it. Was great.
It sounds like a big project as well. So no,
it was it got quite large in the end.
No, excellent. And so now moving on to the future, do you have any advice that you'd give to any students or any youths that might be considering a career in the engineering path?
In engineering in general, don't be afraid of things that you don't know. I've always found, I sometimes get quite nervous when a new subject comes up, if not terms that I've never heard of before. But as soon as you start doing that bit of learning, sometimes it's harder than others. I was particularly challenged by control theory. I remember it was quite advanced dynamics, and took me a while to get my head around that. But you'll get there, just keep practicing, break it down into little bits that you'll understand, and chip away at it, and you'll get there. And just keep going. Don't lose confidence. You'll be fine.
Keep learning, keep learning.
If you've done a degree in engineering, then the skills you learn from that are massively applicable across the board. So even if you decide not to stay in engineering at the end, then you'll have good skills as long as you're focused in.
Yes, exactly. Perfect. So for you now, what are your aspirations for the future?
Well, chartership's the next step, I think.
Yeah.
Well, complete the graduate scheme, get a substantive role, chartership. And then my dream would be to develop a hydrogen, a distributed hydrogen production network. So as we can have hydrogen fueling networks and run our transport on hydrogen. Well, not all of it, but the high torque aspects seem to be particularly applicable to hydrogen. So I'd really love to see us doing that. I think it'd make a massive difference. So.
No, very interesting. No, perfect. Thank you, Ewan, for today. That's the last of all the questions. Thank you for supporting us with this, and thank you everyone that's going to be watching this. Give Ewan some support. He's done excellent today. And that's it from my end, Ewan, unless there's anything else that you'd like to mention.
No, that's everything. Thanks very much for putting us out there. Good fun.
No problem. Thank you very much. I'm going to close this down now, so thank you and take care.
Great. Thanks very much.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.